Hey guys, welcome back to another video. In this video I thought I'd take the opportunity to show you guys how to work with one-way platforms in Unity. And I'm also going to show you guys how I got the character in my game Shadow of the Orient to also fall back through the one-way platform that I constructed, right? So let me just make my screen a little bit smaller here. So let me just show you what I'm talking about. So currently I have Unity open. This is my game, Shadow of the Orient. If you guys want to check it out, it's on Google Play and iOS. Just do a search for Shadow of the Orient. You should be able to find it, or check out the official site, shadowoftheorient.com. But let me show you guys what I mean here by the one-way platforms, in case you're not familiar with it. So currently I got my main character here, and he's currently standing on a one-way platform. So if I were to fall off the platform, I can actually go through it. I can actually go through it vertically by ascending up from beneath it. So if I go onto the wall and I jump up, you'll see that I can go through it from underneath, but I can't fall back down it, right? Like I can't fall back through the platform. So that's essentially a one-way platform, right? And then I also have this structured so I can get my player to actually fall through the platform if the player does a certain action, right? So in this case, it's crouch and jump, and he can fall down through the platform. So I'll show you guys how I set that up as well. And then I have a ladder here, which you can climb up. You can go through the one-way platform, and then you can climb back down the ladder. So I'll kind of give you a quick idea of how that works as well, right? Okay, so first things first, let me jump back into my scene view here so you can see kind of what's going on here. So let me stop the game. Alright, so in my scene view here, okay, so if we look over here in the hierarchy, I'm going to open up my tile maps game object, and this is where all my tile maps are stored. So you'll see here, there's two particular tile maps we're going to be looking at. There's one-way platforms and one-way platforms blocker. So the first one we're going to look at is one-way platforms. So if I zoom in here, you'll notice that you'll see this collider gizmo, right? And if we look in the inspector, there's several components that have been assigned to this tile map game object. So we have our standard tile map component and our tile map renderer. Excuse me. So we have our tile map component. We have our tile map renderer. We have our rigid body, which is required for collisions. So in this case, I have a tile map collider 2D. So once you assign the tile map collider 2D, I believe it automatically assigns a rigid body to the game object as well, if I'm not mistaken. But if it doesn't, you're going to have to add that as well. There's also a composite collider. Basically what a composite collider does is it just takes all of your individual colliders on each tile map piece, and it kind of just groups them all into one collider. So that's the composite collider. And then I have this platform effector 2D component. So this is the one that allows my character to move through this collider in one direction, right? So you could essentially have your player either, you can set up the platform effector 2D to have your player walk through the collider in one direction or in the other direction, depending on how you construct or set up the surface arc, right? So if you look at the parameters here, you'll notice that there's like a little drop down here, one way. So I have use one way checked on, use one way grouping checked on, and then the surface arc is 150. And then there's also some additional options here. I've never actually used these ones, so I'm not quite sure what these do. Use side friction, use side bounce, and side arc. Yeah, so those ones I've never really played around with. I guess I've never really needed to play around with these, so I'm not really sure how to. I can't really give you an explanation on those, but you could pull up the documentation, and you can get a complete overview here of what all the parameters do on the component, right? So it's I'd recommend kind of giving this a read through. Okay, so in my case, So this is currently what I have configured, right? My surface arc is set to 150. I had to kind of play around with the surface arc a bit to get the one-way, I guess, collisions working the way I wanted them to work. So that's something you might want to play around with when you're setting up your one-way platforms. So for my particular game, I needed my character to move through the platform from underneath, right? So going up, not going down. But you could also configure it so the player, I guess, can fall through from the top-down direction instead of the bottom-up. But anyways, so that's my platform. Sorry, so that's my tile map that has the one-way collider that interacts with the player. And then I also have this other tile map layer here. So if you look under the hierarchy, I have the one-way platform blocker. So this one here also has a collider on it, but this collider only interacts with enemies, collectibles, pushable objects, and other objects that aren't static in my environment. And so I'll explain this tile map a little bit later in the video. Okay, so currently, so basically what I'm doing is, so this is the first part of getting your one-way platform to work. It's pretty easy to set up. All you really need to do is, create your tile map, add your tile map colliders, then just lay out your tiles, right? And then make sure you have the platform reflector 2D assigned, and then that will automatically enable the one-way collision on this collider. Okay, so now to get my player to fall through the collider, what I did in my case, the strategy that I deployed was to switch the layer on my player character, so that when we switch the layer, he's no longer interacting with this collider and he falls through it, right? So that was the approach that I took to get this to work. So if I jump into my code, you'll see here that I have a state class, and within the state class I have some logic set up. So I have a method here called handle jump pressed. So this handle jump pressed method will either make my player jump up in the air, or it'll make him fall through the platform. And that's based on whether these conditions are all true, right? Whether all these conditions are met, right? So basically I'm checking for input from the player, whether they're using a gamepad or a keyboard or a controller or something. I'm checking to see if the movement vector, that y value is less than 0, that means I'm pressing down on the keyboard. And then I'm also checking to see if the player is interacting with the one-way platform, and then checking to see if the player is grounded, and then also checking to make sure that the player is not colliding with any particular object in the scene. Right, so if all these conditions are met, then I call a function called fall through platform. And in fall through platform, this is where I quickly create a new layer. I just assign it the following layer here, fall through layer, and then I assign this layer to the agent game object. Right, so I'm doing so I assign to the agent game object and also to the collider game object, and then I'm also just setting some other values here to false, which will allow my player to fall through the platform. And then once this code is called, I start a coroutine, which restores the agent collider after about a half a second. So once the coroutine is completed, let's go down to restore agent collider. Where is that? Right here. So once this coroutine completes, it calls restore collider. And then here I'm basically just switching the player's collider back to back to the state that he needs to be in order to collide again with the one-way platforms. Okay, so that's hopefully that explanation made sense. So again, I'm essentially let me just open up the game here again. Okay, so I'm gonna go with my player. Bring him back over here on the platform. Okay, so yeah, so basically when I'm crouching and I hit the jump button, I am switching the player's layer to a different layer. It's called fall through layer, and that fall through layer does not interact with the one-way platform layer, which is set to one-way platforms, right? So you'll notice here in the inspector, that layer is one-way platforms. And basically you can toggle, if you go under project settings under physics 2D, you can configure here like which layers collide with other layers, right? So when my player is falling through the platform, I'm switching him to a layer called fall through layer, and that fall through layer does not collide or interact in any way whatsoever with the one-way platforms layer, right? So that's what's allowing my player to fall through that platform, right? And so that's essentially how I did, moving through a one-way platform in both directions in my case, right? Because once you configure your one-way platform, your player will only move through that platform in one particular direction. You can't get them to move through it in both directions. It only works one way, right? So if you need your player to jump up, to a platform from beneath, then that's where the one-way platform effector 2D comes into play. And then if you need them to fall back down through it, you're going to have to set up some of your own custom logic to get them to do that, right? So again, in my case, I just swapped out the layer for about half a second, and that allows my player to safely fall through the platform. Now for the ladder, I'm not going to explain how I got my player to climb up and down the ladder. If you guys want to learn how to do that, there's a really good course by Sunny Valley Studio. I'll show you guys quickly which course it is. It's this one here, make a 2D platformer in Unity using design patterns. So in this course here, he'll show you how to climb up and down a ladder. So he'll explain the code and how that works. And he also explains a lot of other useful concepts as well, very advanced concepts. So if you guys are serious about creating a 2D platformer, I would highly recommend checking out this course. It's not that expensive. I think it's like $40 US, totally worth the money. Yeah, so definitely recommend that one. But basically, so what I'm doing here is when I'm climbing up the ladder, I'm actually disabling the collider on the one-way platform. So I don't necessarily need to disable it when I'm climbing up the ladder, but I do need to disable it when I'm climbing down. Otherwise, the one-way platform won't let me descend, right? Because the player's game object or the player's collider is going to still be colliding with the one-way platform. So that's going to prevent me from climbing down the ladder. So in my case, I have to actually disable that collider altogether, right? So you'll notice here, I just turned on gizmos in the game view. So this green collider here, where my mouse cursor is, actually shit, do I have my mouse cursor turned on? I don't remember. Anyways, you see that long green collider beneath the player. You'll notice that when I when I start descending down the ladder, you're going to notice that it disappears, right? And now the thing with this is that when I disable that collider, you're going to run into the problem where you might have enemies fall through those one-way platforms, and that's where the one-way platform blocker tile map comes into play, right? So you'll notice here, if I click on the one-way platform blocker, you're going to see that there's a collider there that reappears. So that collider is only interacting with enemies and other moving game objects within the scene, right? Like other non-static game objects within the scene. And this collider does not interact with the player whatsoever, right? Yeah. So that's the purpose of the one-way platform blocker tile map. So there's essentially two colliders at work here. There's one collider that collides with the player and another collider that collides only with non-static objects in the scene, right? So enemies, collectibles, pushable items, so on and so forth, right? So that's pretty much how I structured my one-way platform, and that's how I got everything to work the way I needed it to. It took me a little while to kind of figure out how to get this to work properly. I did try looking for some tutorials on YouTube and some Udemy courses, but there aren't really any Udemy courses that really cover one-way platforms like in depth. They'll just show you like how to quickly do a platform effector and that's it. Like, yeah, but I mean, in some cases you might need to do more with that one-way platform, right? So in my case, I needed my character to fall through, and I also needed him to climb through the one-way platform as well. So that's just a brief overview of how I structured my one-way platforms and how I got my player to fall through the platform as well. So anyways, it's getting a little bit late now here where I am, but that's pretty much the end of the video. I hope you guys liked it and found it useful. If you did, feel free to like and subscribe. I would appreciate it. And I'll try to get another video out very soon. And hope you guys liked it. So enjoy, and see you guys in the next one.